Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 5 deadline decisions where I'll discuss your final questions and dilemmas ahead of the deadline, and at the end I'll discuss that I might have had a possible change to my plans and my chip strategy moving forward. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, as always, let's start with the Friday press conference updates, and let's start with Alexander Isak. I think my early thought on this, at least, is that he probably doesn't start this game, but I don't think he's far off from being in the starting role for Liverpool. And I do think once he starts, whilst he will not get 90 minutes every game in this team, they'll want to protect him, and they have options like Ekitike, even Gakpo can play as the 9. I certainly think he will be the starting forward. This is enough to put me off, for now, Isak, Ekitike, potentially even Gakpo. Slot has made quite a few comments, though, that he doesn't really see Isak or Ekitike as left wingers. So unless he changes the system, it does feel like Gakpo out of those three seems to be the safest for minutes, but maybe we just avoid all of them. The thing is, once Isak is starting, we know exactly what that man can do. And I actually think that one of the reasons Liverpool looked a bit better against Atletico Madrid is that Isak just linked up the play much better than what we've seen from Ekitike. That is no major criticism of Ekitike, by the way, but I think Isak is much more than just a goal scorer. So yeah, basically, I don't think Isak is likely to start Game Week 5, although I wouldn't be massively surprised. Arne Slot said, what I do know is that Alex did feel his body more maybe than ever before after the 60 minutes he played. So let's see how he's recovered today, and then we're going to think about the lineup. If Isak does start, it probably is another 60 minutes, but I just don't see it personally as of right now. If I had Ekitike, would I sell? Probably not. If I bought Isak already, would I start him? Absolutely. It kind of does feel a little bit with the Liverpool attackers outside of Salah. Don't buy, don't sell, just hold and start them. But it might put me off captaincy around those players other than Mohamed Salah. On Chelsea, Cole Palmer apparently is okay, according to Maresca, because if you didn't see, at the end of the Champions League game for Chelsea, Cole Palmer was holding his groin in the final few seconds, and that's obviously the injury that he's previously had. But Maresca, unless he's lying to us, has said Cole is okay, we have a session now, we flew back yesterday, so we need to assess some of the players. We do have some doubts, nothing else beyond that. We didn't do any sessions since Wednesday's game, and we'll see afterwards. So yeah, maybe there are more doubts than we realise. Maybe there'll be some injuries, but Maresca was quite coy in terms of giving us much information. So let's take it at face value and say that Cole Palmer will be fit for this game. On Arsenal, it sounds like Saka is not far off. And Saka, once fit, will absolutely be an option once again in FPL, even at his price. My only concern around Bukayo Saka is Madueke has been sensational for Arsenal. Like, he's been brilliant on that right-hand side. And knowing that Saka is struggling for fitness and has been for a couple of seasons, and we know that obviously he can be prone to picking up knocks, maybe Saka's minutes just won't be secure enough for us to go there for an option, because at his price, you not only need him to be starting every game, but you need him to be getting more than sort of 60, 70 minutes. And with Madueke playing the way he is, maybe they only play him for 65, 70 minutes every single game. Maybe he'll continue to get early subs. But yeah, Saka, White and Ødegaard, on them Arteta said if there is a chance for Sunday, it will be after tomorrow's sessions because they haven't done anything yet. So we'll have more information tomorrow. So again, if we take Arteta at face value, which I don't necessarily think we should given his track record, it sounds like Saka, White and Ødegaard are not far off. On Murillo, because I know a lot of people are looking to bench boost this week, which we'll discuss in a second, unfortunately, not fantastic news on Murillo, and we don't know either way. So Ange Postecoglou said he's still a doubt, sort of did some individual work today. We'll give him a little bit more time. It's still a little bit sore. It's just whether he can cope with that, so we'll delay the decision. He did then go on to say he will absolutely be fit sort of midweek if he's not fit for this game. So it sounds like he's not far off, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do put him back in, but we don't know either way. And I think if you're on a bench boost, as I will discuss in a second, the major thing you need with a bench boost is just knowing that all 15 of your players start. So it does make it a little bit tricky there. I don't know what I would do in all honesty, because if he starts, he's a great option. We saw how quickly he can pick up DEFCON, but is it worth the risk? Obviously, if you can get away with maybe just starting him and hoping, because if you're not on a bench boost, he'll probably either start or not play at all. Interestingly, apparently Strand Larsen has a chance of being available for this game. And it is, of course, a good game as well. So on Strand Larsen, Vitor Pereira said he trained yesterday which was Thursday. Just one training session with the team. I hope tomorrow he can help us, of course, not for the 90 minutes, but for some period in the game. So it sounds like Strand Larsen should get somewhere between 30 and 70 minutes, which might be enough for you to start him, depending on what the rest of your team looks. And it does mean that maybe moving forward, if Wolves can improve slightly, at his price, Strand Larsen could offer some decent value. Unfortunately, Eddie Howe was not able to provide an update on Fabian Schär and Kieran Trippier, mainly because Eddie Howe gives us absolutely no useful information. He did say that Wissa is expected to be out until after the international break, and basically said he's in a race to be fit for game week 8. So at the moment, whilst, by the way, he made some comments on Walter Made and said that he will not be able to sort of start every single game, it does still mean that Walter Made, I think, should be safe-ish for minutes across the next few Premier League games. On Manchester United, lots of people asking about Cunha because they held. Amorim did say that Mateus Cunha, along with Mason Mount, will be fit for Game Week 5. If you want my opinion as a Man United fan, if Cunha is fit, Cunha starts. He's so important to everything that we do. So my natural inclination is to say that he probably does start here. But if there are some doubts and maybe Amorim is not fully letting on, maybe he just sits on the bench and comes on. It doesn't, for me, Cunha isn't necessarily a case of he either starts or isn't in the squad. We could definitely take him, and if we need him, bring him off the bench. But yeah, I would guess right now that Mateus Cunha starts. Tielemans has been confirmed out for game week 5, and apparently it's a 1 to 2 week calf injury. So if you have Tielemans, unfortunately he will not be available, and you probably will need to sell if you're looking to bench boost this week. Ismail Assar is expected to be back for game week 6, although not definitely in the starting 11. Apparently, he will have his first training session probably on Sunday or Monday. So yeah, if you've got Ismail Assar and you've held him this long, you could potentially keep him. But of course, it is Liverpool in game week 6. And then for the few people that do own Diakite of Bournemouth, because I actually think he's a pretty decent pick at 4.5 million, he's expected to be available for game week 5. So I think that's most of the press conference updates. Let me know if I've missed anything down below. Let's see if we get any more information throughout the day on Friday evening going into the Saturday deadline. Let's now discuss some of your questions. So lots of people are looking at potentially playing the bench boost in game week 5. And in all honesty, I really like it. I've done tons of planning ahead. I've looked at a wildcard in 6, a wildcard in 7, a wildcard in 8, a wildcard in 13. Lots of people, of course, have already wildcarded. I have looked at pretty much every possible combination of players and chip strategy. I have not yet seen a fantastic week to play the bench boost, because unless you are investing in like a backup 4.5 or 5 million goalkeeper, 2 really decent defenders around 4.5 or 5, and then maybe even like a Tijani Reinders or a Paqueta as your sort of 8th attacker as your cheapest player, it's just very unlikely to all align in a single week where you've got an outstanding bench boost. And even if you feel like it could happen, the chances are you'll pick up injuries or issues that just mean you have to use transfers anyway. All of that to essentially say, even if your bench doesn't look fantastic in game week 5, as long as you tick a few key criteria, which I'll discuss in a second, I would probably just go ahead and play it. It's a terrible chip. You get a second one anyway this season in the second half to play in a probable double game week. Maybe just get rid of it. And then at least if you are not yet wildcarding or you haven't yet wildcarded, when you do wildcard, you can strip pretty much all of the money off the bench, or at least pick players where you don't have to think about, like I was looking at a wildcard in 6 and I was like, I might pick Agbadu because he's got a good fixture in game week 9. You don't have to worry about that. You just pick good players. So yeah, all of that to say, I quite like it. The things that I would be thinking about to decide, is it worth playing a bench boost in game week 5? The most important thing, and honestly, I think the most underappreciated thing about playing a bench boost, is are all 15 players very likely to start? I see a lot of people say, this is my bench boost, what do you think? And I'm like, I need to see the rest of the team. I don't care what your bench looks like, because if in your starting 11, you've got players that are weaker than those on the bench, firstly, switch them around. But also, if you've got 2 or 3 players that are injury doubts or don't start every game in your starting 11, and there is genuinely a world where only 12 or 13 of your players start, then it's not worth it. For a bench to be worth it to boost, they need to all be staying on the bench and not ending up subbing into your starting 11. So that's the first thing. Look at all 15 players and say, are all 15 or at least 14 of the 15 very, very likely to start, where you would be hugely surprised if they didn't. The next thing is, do you need transfers purely for the sake of the bench boost to be able to play it? So I'll use my team as an example. I've got a bench right now, as things stand, of Dubravka, Reinders, Estev, and Guiu. Now, I've got Guiu on my bench, and as much as I would like to upgrade him anyway, I only have 1.1 million. So for me to bench boost, I would want to sell Guiu. I would not be happy bench boosting with him there. But because I only have 1.1 million in the bank, I could only get to someone like Foster or Moniz. So if I was to sell GW this week, it doesn't massively improve my team. I am literally selling him just for the sake of a bench boost. So for me, it's not worth it. If, however, let's say you're sat there with 4 million in the bank and you can do GW to João Pedro, that's probably a move you'd be happy making anyway, and it will improve your team anyway. So in that case, you're not using a transfer purely for the sake of the bench boost. You're using a transfer and it will also mean that your bench boost is slightly better. I hope that distinction makes sense, but I wouldn't be using transfers for a chip that is likely to probably get you like 10 or 12 points anyway. The next point is there at least kind of like some potential of a 15 plus point bench boost? Are you looking at that bench and thinking, it honestly is a bit of a state. I can't see me getting many returns there. If that's the case, maybe don't play it. But like in this scenario here, the bench that I've included on the screen is the one that I was sent in by a couple of people, which is Dubravka and Esteve against Forest at home, Reinders against Arsenal, and Richards against West Ham. You've got there a decent enough fixture for Burnley, so there is the potential there. Dubravka could make saves. Esteve and Richards are pretty good for DEFCON, and I think Tijani Reinders is an absolute baller. We saw in the Champions League, he was absolutely fantastic. His minutes are super secure too, so I think an assist or a goal isn't out of the question. So do I think that bench will get 20 points? No, but does it have the potential to do so? I'd say it looks pretty good. And I think Richards and Esteve and Dubravka all have decent clean sheet chance this week. So yeah, try and at least play it in a week where you think there is some potential to do quite well. And then, as I said, think about wildcard. When are you looking to wildcard? How tight will money be? Because if you're looking at a wildcard in 6 or 7 and you've sort of built it and you're like, oh, I've got 0.1 or 0.2 million in the bank, but actually, if I downgrade one of my bench options, it will give me enough money to go and do this, then maybe, again, get rid of the bench boost. I was having this chat with FPL Focal, Oscar. He's looking at potentially bench boosting in Game Week 5 for the sole reason of when he's looking to wildcard, it will allow him to get a stronger starting 11. So again, it's basically at this stage, it's just like get rid of the chip and stop worrying about it. That would be the main reason to play it. So yeah, I really like it. I think it's a good week to play it. If your bench is already set up in a way where it just looks okay, something like Dubravka, Reinders, Richards and Esteve, I'd go for it. If you're in a similar position to me where you've got a GU or a really weak asset that you would have to sell to make the bench boost decent, I'd probably just leave it. And another opportunity sort of semi-similar to this will probably pop up across the next sort of 10 to 15 game weeks. So I found the benching decisions graphic, as always, very difficult to do this week, but it always comes down to a combination of things. I like players with good minutes. I preferably like players with multiple routes to points, so penalties, set pieces. I like fixtures, and also DEFCON needs to come into it as well now. Like defenders with decent fixtures all of a sudden are startable over attackers. Like as of right now, I'm playing a 4-4-2 in my team, and I'll discuss my team at the end. I am benching Tijani Reinders for someone like a Chris Richards, which I would never normally consider, but I think this week and in this season, it is worth considering. I always would put players like Bruno Fernandes towards the top. Some people won't like that, but he takes set pieces, corners. Sorry, that's the same thing. Set pieces, penalties, DEFCON, good minutes. He has some open play threat as well. I could never get on board with benching a player like that, as much as I don't think Chelsea are a bad defence at all. I think Jean-Philippe Mateta with Adam Wharton coming back is an absolutely fine option. Again, he's on penalties. Maybe a surprise, I've got Anderson very high, and that is the Nottingham Forest Anderson. It's an exceptional fixture. We've seen now, in 3 weeks, he's been 1 off the DEFCON. Last week, he got 15 defensive contributions. You've got a DEFCON monster with a great fixture and some open play threat as well. Take some set pieces. I just think Anderson is a really decent option. Like, I couldn't get on board with benching Anderson this week for me. I think Xavi Simons is a fine option. I've got Xavi Simons higher than Rodgers and Wirtz, but I've actually got Kudus below them. The reason for that is Kudus so far, when Xavi Simons has been on the pitch, eye test wise and a little bit data wise, he just feels like he's got slightly lower goal threat than Xavi Simons. I think they'll both be super creative. They both take set pieces. But Xavi Simons feels the one for me that looks more likely to go and grab the goal. So as a result, I think Xavi Simons, Rodgers, Wirtz, Kudus, they're all extremely close. I've put Njai a little bit lower just because whilst he does have penalties, and I think he's arguably, in fact, he is for me a better asset than Kudus, Wirtz, Rodgers, and arguably even Xavi Simons, it's just a more difficult fixture. So for that reason, I've got him there. And interestingly, I've got Van Dijk just below him. I don't think it's a situation where, like, if you're starting Njai, you can't start Van Dijk, because Van Dijk has shown in the Champions League he can score a header, and also his defensive contribution potential has looked very decent as well. A lot of the centre-backs this week, though, Gabriel, Lacroix, Anderson, Richards, Senesi, I have no issue starting them, and I think if you're sat there with someone like a Reinders or a Dewsbury Hall, probably unlikely to get an attacking return. Reinders and Dewsbury Hall have shown very little attacking threat DEFCON potential so far this season. I would probably be willing and tempted to start a centre-back with good DEFCON potential ahead of someone like a Reinders or a Dewsbury Hall. I've then got assets like Diouf and Dorgu down below, because the reason for that is, yes, they've got some attacking threat, but clean sheet potential isn't that high, and they're not very good for defensive contributions. So you do really need an attacking return, and that's just never overly likely, I would say, with a defender. As always, just trust your gut feeling with benching decisions. And if you're in a situation, linking to the previous section, if you're in a situation where you have some genuinely terrible benching headaches and you're like, I do not know who to start, then maybe that is a sign that you should be playing the bench boost as well. So guys, I actually don't think captaincy for Game Week 5 is as straightforward as some people are suggesting, because I don't think there is a single standout option. Like most weeks there will be. Game Week 6, it feels like Haaland is the standout option. Game Week 5, there is not a single player that has a really strong fixture, has shown brilliant form and good minutes, and maybe has penalties as well. Like, it's just not lining up in that way. Because as much as Salah has a good fixture, Everton at home, I don't think Everton are a bad defence. Salah's not really shown much form in the Premier League. Over the last 3 games, he's totaled 0.04 non-penalty expected goals. So normally you'd say Salah, but we're not really seeing it from him in the Prem. Haaland's obviously been exceptional, but he's got the most difficult fixture in the Premier League in terms of for an attacker going against Arsenal away. Gyökeres has looked good, but playing against City. You've then got people like Watkins and Wood, great fixtures. Normally you'd be all over that, but Wood's minutes are a slight doubt, and Ollie Watkins has been absolutely terrible along with Aston Villa. So yeah, I don't think there's a single player right now where I'm like, yeah, they are the captain, which is maybe exciting. This might offer you an opportunity to go against the crowd, because I do still think a lot of people would default to Mohamed Salah. And as of right now, as boring as it is, that's what I'm looking at doing. Because Salah does have penalties. His minutes are always fantastic. And as we'll discuss in a second, there was a little quote from Arne Slot, which made it sound like he wants more from Salah during the games. He wants him on the ball more, and he wants him scoring more goals. And even when Salah isn't playing well, he finds a way to return. He actually had an interview recently. Someone sent me the link. I'll try to find it and maybe link it down below. But if not, it basically was a quote from Salah where he commented on the fact that he's not playing in the same way. He's picking out moments within the game to perform. Like Salah at his age and with the players around him, he doesn't need to go crazy for the entire game. He just needs to deliver in those single moments where he gets the chance, and that's kind of what he's doing. And also, he showed in the Champions League, in 7 minutes, the guy had a goal and an assist. He accumulated almost 2 non-penalty expected goal involvement in that game. So Salah isn't washed and cooked. He's not been in a great run of form, but on his day he's great. And I think with a home fixture like against Everton, it's about as good as the other fixtures that you could look at this week. So yeah, it feels a little boring. But I mean, if you look at the market odds, if you look at the models, it kind of all does just lead towards saying that Mohamed Salah is just about the best captaincy option. If I had Cole Palmer, I'd be extremely, extremely tempted, because Cole Palmer against Man United has been an absolute menace. Like, I'm a Manchester United fan. Every time Palmer plays against us, usually, he does very well. Obviously, the hat-trick being the famous one was it in the 4-3 win. So, yeah, I think it's a good game for him. Manchester United have not shown much in particular in terms of defensive solitude after that Arsenal game. And I just think it's a fixture which will suit him. Now, his fitness is a slight worry. Obviously, he was holding his groin. Like, he's not ready to play like consecutive 90 minutes. So will he get subbed off around 60, 70? Is there a chance that he doesn't start this game? These are the only things that would put me off. And then I would just go, well, if I had Salah then, maybe I default back to Salah. But I would at least give Palmer some consideration. Haaland and Gyökeres are absolutely fine. Like, I think given the fixture, I wouldn't personally go for Haaland or Gyökeres. But if you told me that this was a 2-2, 3-3 absolute goal fest with both teams going at it, I wouldn't be surprised. It's going to be very game state dependent. This is going to sound like an obvious thing to say, but if it's a cagey first 20 to 30 minutes and neither team managed to score, this could easily be 0-0. On the off chance, though, that one of these teams gets a goal in the opening 5 or 10 minutes, game state is what we're essentially saying here is that will change the nature of the game. If Arsenal score inside 5 minutes, maybe they'll sit back massively and just park the bus. If City score in the opening 5 minutes, though, and it could be Haaland, of course, then Arsenal's game plan of being quite defensive and not really they can't do that anymore. So as much as we can sit here and make predictions, like I say, if you told me that there were goals in this game, I wouldn't be hugely surprised. So you could just go for one of the two. I was actually really interested to see the market odds are favouring Gyökeres ahead of Haaland. I think that's just mainly due to how good Arsenal's defence are. But Gyökeres is as likely to score, according to the market odds, as Salah. which I find crazy. So maybe Gyökeres is even a decent shout, but his minutes have been a little bit suspect, getting a lot of sort of pre-70-minute subs. Believe it or not, I still don't hate an Ollie Watkins captaincy shout. I don't think I could go there now because, again, Villa have been shocking so far, and I don't think Watkins has shown anything close to his best. But these are the sort of games where you would expect Watkins to do a little bit better. So if you just don't have Salah, you don't trust it, you don't want to captain Haaland or Gyökeres in those types of fixtures, maybe there are doubts over Palmer's fitness and you just don't want to go there either, I think after that, Watkins is one of the better options. I've got Semenyo on this list. I think Newcastle have been so good defensively so far this season, but it is a home game. We know that Semenyo has been performing at an extremely high level. I genuinely don't mind it. There are worse players to captain for sure than Semenyo. It's not a player that I would even half consider personally captaining, but I understand that not everyone plays the game that I do, and in the same way that I do. And if you're going based off like form and the way that players have been playing, you have to consider Semenyo. Obviously, I think João Pedro is a decent shout, especially if we think Palmer's minutes might be reduced. I think João Pedro has shown in the absence of Palmer that he can do extremely well. And I wanted to give a small shout out to someone like a Chris Wood, because as much as I don't think Wood will get anything close to 90 mins, if he starts and gets like 65, 70, he could absolutely do damage in that time. For me, though, I would just go for one of the big boys. I think Salah or Palmer probably make more sense than Haaland for me this week. Maybe a cheeky shout out to Watkins and Semenyo if you want to differentiate. Let me know who you're captaining in Game Week 5. So guys, I think the major talking point at the moment is Salah versus Haaland versus both versus potentially neither, although you probably want at least one of them. And at what point you make the pivot and at what point you look to go back. And is it worth squeezing in both at the expense of a Gyökeres or a double Arsenal defence or a Semenyo? The truth is, I don't know. And this is what's going to then move us on to my team in a bit and my possible change of plans. I don't know that I have enough information to make a semi-permanent decision on this right now. And I should note, it's never fully permanent unless you spread the money in a terrible way. If you pivot from Salah to Haaland, it's just 2 transfers to pivot back, right? If you go for both and then realise that only Haaland's worth having, or Haaland drops off a cliff as we saw last season after Game Week 5 or 6, and Salah looks fantastic, it's very easy to then sell one of them. Unless you go without either, which I don't think many people are discussing at the moment, it's never permanent. You're not like completely locking yourself in to the team you go with. But then again, if you are wildcarding in the next 2 weeks, you don't really want to wildcard into an incorrect setup, or at least into a setup where you don't have full conviction on that. And that's kind of my issue right now. Like, I kind of do want to wildcard in Game Week 6, but I just don't know how I want to set up, because Cole Palmer exists as well, by the way. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if the best setup is Haaland and Salah, but at the same time, my gut feeling is telling me the best thing to do is to go with one of them, and if you get it wrong, you can pivot out of that. But I just don't know right now, actually, who I would want to go with from sort of Game Week 7 or 8 onwards. Very clearly, I think in Game Week 6 and 7, if you're viewing those as 2 game weeks, Haaland is absolutely the one you want. Haaland so far this season has 6 non-penalty expected goal involvement. Salah has less than 1. So Salah is getting nowhere close to Haaland as an asset over the opening 4 game weeks, but it's only 4 game weeks. 6 and 7, you want Haaland. So Burnley and Brentford for Haaland versus Crystal Palace away and Chelsea away for Salah. As much as Salah could do well, I don't think many people disagree, you want Haaland there. From game week 8 onwards, I'm not so sure, because Haaland's fixtures are Everton, Villa away, Bournemouth at home, Liverpool at home, Newcastle away. It's not a great set of fixtures. Now, I'm not saying Salah's are much better, but Salah has Manchester United at home, a fixture where we know, by the way, that is a fantastic fixture for Salah. Brentford away, Villa at home, obviously the City game, they play against each other in 11, and then it's Forest at home. Those 5 fixtures for me are better than Haaland's. And as we saw last season, it's very risky just writing off an asset. We wrote off Salah, even though he was doing quite well, and loads of us sold Salah to go and bring in Haaland. Haaland then drops off a cliff and Salah goes absolutely nuclear. Now, I don't think we'll see the heights of what we saw from Salah last season, but I am a little bit sceptical to completely write him off. And at the moment, in pretty much every Game Week 6 wildcard draft I've built, I've had Cole Palmer. Do I know that I want Cole Palmer moving forward? No. What if Palmer does start getting reduced minutes? What if he doesn't start every Premier League game? And instead of going for these 2 absolutely brilliant FPL assets, I try and squeeze a Palmer in instead. What if in a couple of weeks I'm actually like, no, do you know what? I think having the pair and going without Palmer's the play. What if I squeeze in, like in my recent Wildcard 6 draft, I've had Haaland, Gyökeres, Palmer. What if Gyökeres keeps getting 60-minute subs, maybe doesn't look that fantastic, isn't picking up bonus, Palmer is struggling for fitness, And I'm like, oh, what an idiot. I wish I'd have just gone for Salah and Haaland and gone a little bit cheaper with my other attackers. I just don't feel like I have the conviction and confidence and information right now to make this call. And as I said, it's not permanent. So if you are wildcarding in 5 or 6 and you make a decision, you can always switch away from that. But what I would maybe prefer to do instead is, if I can, just delay the wildcard a little bit longer and delay this decision a little bit longer. I think most people would benefit from having Haaland in 6 and 7. Whether that is to wildcard in 6 and have both of them, or to pivot with transfers away from Salah, I think all I know right now for sure is I want Erling Haaland in Game Week 6 and 7. From Game Week 8 onwards, I'm not sure, which is now making me consider, is Game Week 8 the better wildcard window and the best point to wildcard once we can get information from the next 3 weeks? Because if over the next 3 weeks, Haaland does go absolutely crazy and Salah continues to struggle, look like he's playing very wide, not get many touches, and maybe he doesn't get some last-minute returns in those games, then maybe we make a decision with more confidence. Also, what happens with sort of Gakpo Foden? Because it might be actually that Gakpo looks like the main man, or Isak is getting exceptional minutes and we want to go there instead. I guess what I'm saying here is, and this doesn't just apply to wildcard, it just applies to everything, I kind of need like 2 or 3 more weeks of information to start to feel like I'm confident in what I'm doing. Now, this is potentially a fault in the way that I make decisions and play FPL. Lots of other people are much more aggressive and just make decisions based on gut instinct and just go for it, and that could end up paying off for you. But I'm struggling right now. Like when I was building a Game Week 6 wildcard, it had 0 Liverpool. Am I comfortable doing that? Maybe. But do I have the info to make that decision with confidence? Again, no. There was this quote, like I said, from Arne Slot around Salah, and he said, I prefer to see him how he was against Atletico, and he was a lot more sort of central, getting a lot more on the ball. Again, he had almost 2 XGI. He had 2 big chances missed. He had, I think, 3 big chances in total. He created 2 big chances. Like, the man was just on fire. So he said, I prefer to see how he was against Atletico. Newcastle, he hardly ever was in play with the ball, so it was tough, but Atletico was a joy to watch. So even Arne Slot is saying he wants more from Salah, he wants him to be getting on the ball more and doing more, and it just concerns me right now, pivoting away from the best asset we've ever seen in the Premier League. So maybe there is a little bit of FOMO here, maybe there's a little bit of knee-jerk and recency bias, and maybe I should still stick to the original plan, wildcard in 6, get rid of Salah, and go for the Haaland-only draft, but I'm now considering potentially delaying that. Hopefully that's helped you. I mean, I've not really given you an answer because, in all fairness, there is not an answer because we can't predict the future. But these are the things that I'm thinking about right now. What I'm going to now do as the final section is to go through my current plans, show you why I might be tempted to delay the wildcard instead of going in 6, maybe using transfers instead and delaying the wildcard until 8. But I'd love to know what your plan is for Salah, Haaland, both Palmer, wildcard, and just how you see the next few weeks going in FPL. So guys, this final section might be a bit messy and a little bit rambly, but it's just to go through my updated thoughts, because the last video you would have watched, my team selection, I said I was over 80% likely to wildcard in Game Week 6, and I would say that might now be down maybe around sort of 30 to 40% likelihood. The more I think about it, like I say, it feels like I'm wildcarding because I've had a bad start, and because I'm sort of panicking that if I don't wildcard, I'll continue bleeding team value, I'll continue getting red arrows, but I don't actually know that I'm ready to wildcard in terms of making decisions around key players and assets. And also, when we look at my team in Game Week 6, it doesn't look like it needs a wildcard massively in Game Week 6 if I make a couple of transfers. So I would love to know what you think down below. I know a lot of people have just been saying to me, Ross, just wildcard, your team's a state, you've had a terrible start to this season, you're overthinking it. And it could be that I'm overthinking it, but at the same time, I have done this before in FPL, where I've rushed a wildcard when I'm not ready to wildcard because I'm panicking in relation to sort of my rank in the previous weeks, and I would have been better off just delaying slightly. I've not committed either way. It might be that I wake up tomorrow and say, actually, I do want to wildcard it in Game Week 6. It might be that the football on Saturday/Sunday just absolutely confirms it and locks it in for me. So in Game Week 5, firstly, because this is a Game Week 5 video, I don't plan on making a transfer because whether I wildcard in 6 or I don't, I want the 2 free transfers. And especially if I don't wildcard, I will need 2 transfers to pivot to Haaland. And as a result, making a transfer this week makes no sense. As of right now, I'm lining up in a 4-4-2, and I think the team looks pretty good. I wouldn't play Dubravka, I don't think. I've got Sanchez in. Although it's a discussion to be had around whether I play, by the way, Dubravka or Sanchez. But Sanchez in goal, Munoz, Williams, Richards, Porro as the back four, Salah, Fernandes, Wirtz and Kudus as the midfield four, and then Watkins and Mateta. Yes, I'm missing Semenyo, but I don't think it's an easy fixture for him. Would I love João Pedro and Palmer? Yes, I would. But again, at the same time, I'm hoping that they don't go too crazy. And then Haaland and also Arsenal players, I'm not expecting too much from, and I don't know which way I want to call that game going, considering they play against each other. So this week, don't think I need a wild card or that the wild card would massively benefit me. Going into game week 6, let's set up the team. So let's just optimize it. As of right now, it immediately doesn't look too bad for game week 6. What I would probably do, like I say, is use 2 free transfers to pivot from Salah to Haaland. And because I have 1.1 million in the bank, it's not difficult. Mateta goes to Haaland, and Salah obviously goes down to anyone up to 8.9 million. So I actually have some choices at this stage. I'm slightly tempted, especially if I am to wildcard in 8, to go for Phil Foden. Now, I don't know if I would have the guts to do that, let's say. I don't know if I would trust these minutes enough. But again, if I'm wildcarding very soon anyway, it's only a short-term punt. So Phil Foden has interested me, but perhaps the more straightforward one would be Semenyo. If I then make those transfers, I still have money in the bank, or 1.4 million in the bank. The team would be Sanchez against Brighton, Porro against Wolves, Williams against Sunderland at home, and then Munoz, yes, has Liverpool, but it's Munoz, so I have no issue there. The midfield is Semenyo against Leeds, Fernandes against Brentford, Reinders against Burnley, Kudus against Wolves. Florian Wirtz is the only one I wouldn't desperately want to start there, but I guess I could take a hit to go to Foden if I'm that bothered. But also, I don't have an issue just for 1 week there. And then Watkins against Fulham and Haaland against Burnley. That team's not bad, because the thing is, if I wildcard in 6, yeah, I would have more Arsenal, but they've got Newcastle in 6. So I'm sort of looking more at 6 now and just thinking that team really isn't too awful. Am I sort of rushing the wildcard in a week where I don't think my wildcard team would look that much stronger than this team right here? Obviously, I would have Cole Palmer and João Pedro in, so if Chelsea go and batter Brighton like 4-0, then it probably would have been a mistake for me. Then I look at game week 7, and we sort of have a similar-ish situation where I'm like, actually, I quite like my team. The reason for that is I obviously have Fernandes against Sunderland and Watkins against Burnley, 2 assets I know have been really disappointing. I've also got Kudus against Leeds, a player that I probably would sell on a wildcard. I've got double Palace defence against Everton, 2 players that I would sell on a wildcard. I, of course, then have Semenyo and Haaland in place. Even Pedro Porro against Leeds as well, I don't mind having. The only 2 weak players in this team, really, are Sanchez for his game against Liverpool, but I could play Dubravka. And then potentially you could say Florian Wirtz. In fact, I would say Florian Wirtz against Chelsea also isn't a great option. This week, I could sell Wirtz, but what I'd be tempted to do is just say 1 more week with this team. And then I do think in game week 8, it then makes sense to wildcard, because I just look at the team overall. Aston Villa now have tricky fixtures, so I don't want Watkins. I wouldn't be desperate to have loads of players from Spurs moving forwards. I definitely wouldn't want to keep Wirtz. I think from this point onwards, the fixtures do start to turn a little bit for Crystal Palace. I wouldn't want Fernandes after that Sunderland game, and I would absolutely categorically need to start bringing in Arsenal assets. I would have missed the West Ham game, but then from game week onwards, Fulham, Palace, Burnley, Sunderland, I need to jump on them, absolutely. And obviously I can make the decision at this point. Do I want Salah? Do I want Palmer? Do I want Haaland? Do I want to try and fit in all 3? Do I want 2 of them? So I don't know. I would love your opinion on this down below, because I don't think it's an easy decision. And lots of people, and I'm not saying this is the wrong way to do it, but just wildcard. Your team's terrible. That's what I keep hearing. But it just feels a little bit like boring, sort of superficial analysis. I kind of want to think about this a little bit closer. And I'm not sure my team for 6 and 7 would look that much better with a wildcard. From 8 onwards, absolutely. And I guess the other thing is, how big do I think the likes of Chelsea and Arsenal will go in 6 and 7? Because that's the thing. I won't have... In fact, Chelsea probably won't go massive in 7 because they've got Liverpool. But you see what I mean? Chelsea and Arsenal are the 2 teams that I'm heavily underinvested in comparison to what I would be on the wildcard. Especially that Arsenal against West Ham game in game week 7. That feels like an absolute banker of a clean sheet. I can see Gabriel getting a 15-pointer. I can see Raya making some saves. So that is the one fixture I'm a little bit concerned about. Maybe it is closer to 50-50 as of right now, because I could still see myself waking up tomorrow and just thinking, I need a wild card in 6. I'm just going to get rid of all these terrible players, especially if we have another week where Watkins is disappointing, Wirtz doesn't do anything, Mateta comes off around 60 mins. So maybe the weekend football will dictate it slightly. I'll leave it there. Let me know what you think about my plans. Let me know what your plans are as well. And let me know what you're thinking about chip strategy over the coming game weeks too. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 5 deadline decisions video. I have a little bit of a ramble at the end about my team and my plans as well. Hopefully you have enjoyed. And if you did enjoy this video and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. Make sure to drop a like as well. Let's aim for 2,000 likes. But until next time, which will be the deadline stream tomorrow, thank you very much. Bye-bye.